So this is the Castaneda Hotel. This was Fred Harvey's first trackside hotel. So it was in this building, actually in this room, that Harvey's hospitality empire really got off the ground. Of course, before this, they had built the magnificent Montezuma up the canyon here. But this building was an experiment for Fred Harvey. So the original plans, in fact, said division offices in a hotel for the Santa Fe Railway Company. So the North Wing was just offices for the railroad because at the time, Las Vegas was the biggest, richest city in New Mexico, right? It was bigger than Albuquerque, it was richer than Santa Fe, because all the merchants who came out on the Santa Fe Trail set up in Las Vegas first, not in Santa Fe. So this became the mercantile hub for this whole part of the Southwest. There were 3 trolley systems in the Southwest, right? Denver, El Paso, and Las Vegas. This was the big town. So you can imagine, in the 1880s, there was construction everywhere. And what happened was the Santa Fe Railway had built the magnificent Montezuma, thinking everybody would want to go to a European-style hot springs resort. But instead, they came on the train to Las Vegas, and they went over and stayed at the Plaza, which was nice for me, but not so much for the Santa Fe Railroad. So they figured they would build their own hotel, the Castaneda, and it was so successful that a few years later they built a dedicated office building, converted the North Wing to guest rooms, and then after this, of course, they built the Alvarado in Albuquerque. And the Santa Fe Railway decided, of course, instead of going to Santa Fe, which was their original destination, the real target was to get across the country to Los Angeles. So the Santa Fe Railway just kind of bypassed Santa Fe, New Mexico. Santa Fe Railway didn't go to Santa Fe, it went to Lamy, and they built a little spur line up just kind of as a stop to Santa Fe, and then went on to Los Angeles. But this is where that whole hospitality empire started, where the whole first floor was food and beverage, right? So in this enormous building, it was all dining rooms. A lunchroom, which we're going to go to, and a lunchroom kitchen. A formal dining room for people who were staying and wanted something more elaborate, and an enormous kitchen. And then 40 guest rooms upstairs with bathrooms down the hall because it was the 1890s, right? So this building closed as a hotel in 1948. 70 years ago, this building closed as a hotel. The Alvarado, of course, got torn down, as did so many of the great Harvey hotels. But the Alvarado was essentially this building scaled up a little bit. This dining room seats 100. The Alvarado was like 118. And people mourned the loss of the Alvarado, but the Castaneda is still here. Las Vegas was forgotten about, right? So this was the biggest, richest city. It was completely forgotten about. Doc Holliday's saloon was in the next block. Billy the Kid and Jesse James met at the Montezuma. This was the town. Everything happened here. Every bit as important a history for the Southwest as Taos or Santa Fe. And Las Vegas, everybody forgot. So we're putting it back on the map, and we're grateful to you for coming to Las Vegas today. So what we're going to do is walk down the hall into the lounge, which was the original lunchroom, walk out to the backside, because of course that's the front door, right? Because the railway assumed everybody was coming by train. And that's the pretty side, and you'll see even though it's almost November, we have gardeners working away. Understand that 2 years ago, literally it snowed in this room. So what that meant is first the roof failed, the attic failed, the second floor failed, and this pressed tin ceiling, about 20% of this pressed tin ceiling is new. So everything that you see today, almost everything is new. The walls have been replastered, every window has been rebuilt. We made a negative, a mold of every one of these ceiling patterns, cast and plaster exact copies, and feathered them in. So now you can't tell like where that chandelier is there. Virtually everything in that part of that room is new. The cast iron columns are original. That counter is original, but it was of course reconstructed. In this room, Fred Harvey worked out the business model where the lobby was a waiting room for the lunchroom, a waiting room for the formal dining room, a check-in for the hotel, and a retail space, because Harvey became the biggest retailer in the Southwest for authentic Southwestern arts and crafts. All started in this room. This beautiful floor was under many layers of carpet and mastic and vinyl. This was a couple of weeks of work just to sand this down to the original floor. So the space, I think, looks and feels pretty much like it would have in 1898 when the hotel opened. Any questions in here? Yes, sir.
I just want to say how indebted we are to you and Tina. Yes. And I'll tell you how appreciative all of us are for what you've done. It's amazing.
Yeah, this is many people working on this building. We had a
Team
construction
Alpha.
crew. We had a construction crew of some 50 people working on this building for a year and a half. We have the Harvey girls who are here doing tours. We have an incredible hotel staff who operates the building to create this period authentic hospitality. But ultimately, it only works because people like you come and stay here. So it's a team. It's all of us with all of you that saves these wonderful buildings. So thank you for coming out today. For those of you who just got here, we will do another tour at 1:30. So it's going to be hard to keep all these people together. Don't worry, we'll come back and get you as you go through. Okay, a few more questions in here. Yes.
Fred Harvey died in 1901.
Yes.
Did he ever visit here? Because this came before.
We believe he did, yes. There was an
You believe
article
he
that
did.
said Fred Harvey came, stayed here, because he certainly came out to the Montezuma.
Right.
So we're pretty confident that Harvey came and saw this building.
I have a question.
Yes.
The restaurant, will be the same restaurateur as Winslow?
Yes. So every property that we have has its own restaurateur. So running a restaurant is a complicated business like running a hotel. So in each case, we lease the restaurant. So we design and build it with the restaurateur. In this case, it's Sean Sinclair, who I'll introduce you to in a little bit. Sean is certainly one of the best trained restaurateurs in the history of New Mexico. He opened Farm and Table in Albuquerque when he was rated the best restaurant in Albuquerque. He ran he was sous chef in Little, Washington, which is consistently rated one of the best restaurants in the world. When he went from 2 to 3 Michelin stars. But he grew up in Tijuana, wanted to come back to New Mexico. So he's a real local farm to table guy, and he intends to build the best restaurant in New Mexico here. There'll be 2 dining rooms here. The lounge, which is already open. We're serving every night except Tuesday night. And it's spectacular. It's every bit as good as the Turquoise Room. With a much bigger bar. The dining room is going to be multiple courses. The first meal served in there is going to be tonight. And that was sold out a very long time ago. And it'll be open every day in the spring. Any other questions in here? Oh, and we're serving breakfast tomorrow, so for those of you who are around, if you want to eat here, there's actually going to be a breakfast first time here tomorrow morning from 8 to 11. Any more questions in here? Okay, so what we're going to try to do, I'm going to go around and open that door. As you go down the hall, there's also bathrooms, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the next one in the lounge. And for those of you who want to wait for the next one at 1:30, we'll be back here. Okay, so I'll just start, because we're going to run out of time. This was the original lunchroom. And you can see there's a big bond beam in the middle of the room. That's how big the lunchroom was. Because Fred Harvey's business, of course, was serving people on the train, right? So the idea here was that they would come on the train, they would get off into this room directly from the train, wouldn't have to go in the rest of the hotel, and they could be served a quick meal here in this room. It was only half this big. So where the bar is now was the original kitchen for the lunchroom. There were 2 kitchens here and 2 dining rooms here. If you look at the floor carefully, you'll see there are a number of places where the tile pattern changes, and you'll see there'll be 4 holes in the floor. That's because a bar stool would have been screwed to the floor there. So the counter was right here. You guys would have been Harvey girls. We would have been sitting on the bar on this side, right? We would have come off the train, sat down, been fed really quickly, and got back on the train. So it was so successful that the railway took that wall out and pushed the room back to that wall around 1900. And where that door is there, that was the door that went into what they called the billiard room, which is a little tiny hexagonal shaped room. And then beyond it, where the elevator is now, was the entire public bathroom for the hotel. Wow. Think about this. 100 seats in the dining room, 60 seats in here, plus the arcade. You could have easily been serving 200 people at a time here. There was 1 public bathroom, 2 toilets, 2 urinals, 2 sinks, where the elevator is now. Obviously not quite to code. So when I acquired the building in 2014, we created this axis, right? Obviously there was no fireplace. The walls were covered with mirrors because this was a disco in the 70s. Flocked wallpaper, ceiling collapsing. So where that door is, we put bathrooms behind that. So now they're big ADA standard bathrooms. Created this long axis, so from the front door, from the front desk, you can see all the way into this lovely warm fireplace, which you'll be able to see tonight if you come back tonight. What was the kitchen was turned into a bar early on. We don't know exactly the date, but those walls were solid. So when I bought the building, the hotel closed in 1948. We couldn't get in the rest of the building. This belonged to a single woman, Marie Eld, for 30 years, and she lived in the corner upstairs, like the crazy aunt in the attic. So I bought the building from Marie, and she would come down and open the bar occasionally and scowl at people, and the bar was known locally as the Nasty Casty. I don't know, did anybody come and have a drink at the Nasty Casty? How was it?
It was beer soaked.
Right? Yeah, it lived up to its name. Anyway, this is a little nicer bar.
We walked into it, the bar, and said, "I don't think so," and walked out.
Yeah, right? Now, I think this is the prettiest bar in New Mexico. So what we did is we opened up all of those walls so you can still read the architecture of the building, the original plans, but created this beautiful bar. That bar was built 6 months ago.
Wow.
But it's built in the style of a turn-of-the-century Brunswick bar. And I think it's just a really beautiful space. So now there's all this flow of space that there never was in this building before. So we wanted to be sensitive to the original architecture, but this is not a restoration. We didn't put it back as it was in 1898. We wanted to make it have a historic authenticity, an appropriate feel, but make it a contemporary space. So it's not exactly like it was. In fact, it's much better than it was in 1898. So from here, we're going to go out the door so you can see the front of the building. Then we're going to come back. Then we'll look in the dining room. Of course, they're getting ready for a big dinner in the dining room tonight. So we won't be able to go in there. But we are going to go upstairs and down to the north wing. Any questions in here?
Could you comment on the chandeliers?
So we're always acquiring stuff. These chandeliers came from an estate in Palm Beach, Florida. I'm always acquiring antiques. If you get to look in a couple of rooms, you'll see they're full of period authentic antiques. It's a lot more work than a normal hotel. A normal hotel, of course, there's 80 rooms and everyone's exactly the same. And here everything is entirely different. Just painting this room was a couple months of color studies and samples on the walls to get this kind of Victorian intricacy. So a lot of this molding is new, right? So we wanted to create this sense of an 1890s room, but it's new. Yes?
Can you describe this table that has?
Yeah, it's a card table, right?
Yeah.
It's a card table. So you can't gamble in here, but it has a kind of a nice feel to it for a lounge. So again, we wanted the furnishings to be period appropriate. So there's some things that, we have several of, like the dining room, there's 8 booths. Obviously, there wouldn't have been booths in 1898. But it's appropriate for today. But we balance that off by having all these period antiques. Like, look at the mural over the bar. So nobody even knew that mural was there. So that was covered under layers of plaster and sheetrock because that was the hood, the chimney for the lunchroom kitchen. So we believe that was painted in early 1900s, maybe 1905, something like that, maybe by Maynard Dixon. We'd been hired by the Santa Fe Railway to do a number of these kind of cartoon things. So it's very much in this style. We have no authentication. Just like we believe Coulter renovated the building in the early 1900s. We can't prove that yet, but it's got those hallmarks all over it. So we didn't want to over-restore it, right? So we just repaired all the plaster that was destroyed and left it as kind of this part of the story. Yes?
Roosevelt and Rough Riders, did they stay here?
Yes, they did. So most of the Rough Riders came from Las Vegas, New Mexico, because this was cowboy country. They were real cowboys here. So when Teddy put out the call for people to go with him to Cuba, they came mostly from here. So when they did the first reunion, they came from here. So Roosevelt came in on the train. He was governor of New York at the time. That flag is an exact replica of Teddy Roosevelt's regimental flag that they carried up San Juan Hill. So the building is full of these beautiful kind of period stories and artifacts, and the more time you spend in the building, the more you're going to get the nuances of the history here. There's a story about the flag there, yes.
I heard that you all bought some of the furniture from La Fonda.
We did. So when La Fonda decided to renovate the hotel, when you reach a certain threshold, it's about 20% of the square footage, you have to bring everything up to code. And that meant in that case, they had to just gut the space because you could never turn around a wheelchair in a bathroom, for example. So they took all the old furniture and put it in a warehouse. They were going to auction it off. I knew the Ballons pretty well, who owned the building, and I asked if I could see the furniture before they auctioned it off. Jenny Kimball, who now is the president, said, yeah, sure. And of course, I fell in love with it. I asked if I could buy some, and they said, sure. So I bought 1,000 pieces of furniture. So we had to buy a building in Winslow, Arizona to take all the furniture back out to Arizona. And now, of course, it's all coming back to New Mexico. So yes, we bought all that furniture from the farm, and a bunch of it's in the building here. Because we wanted to keep that collection intact, right? It's a Fred Harvey collection. Ultimately, Tina and I don't have kids. All of this is in trust basically it's a charitable trust. So these will become public assets when we go away.
Did you buy the Fonda desk? Do you remember the old desk?
No, we didn't. That was gone before.
Okay.
So this was basically guest room furniture, some of the ballroom furniture, headboards. We auctioned off one piece last night for the New Mexico History Museum, and it was $1,700, $1,800 for one piece. Yes.
What's your next project?
As you may know, we acquired the legal tender in Lamy, which is now also open Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're working on acquiring the Santa Fe Southern Railway that goes between Santa Fe and Lamy. So we have a couple other projects we're working on. But as you know, we keep working on them. So just this year, we renovated the train station in Winslow and opened that as a museum. So we'll be working on this for years. Okay, so we should go outside quickly.
Welcome to my studio. This is an amazing space. We opened up the ceilings here so we can do 2 stories. And I'm going to let you go upstairs, but just be careful. That will be my office and where I store paintings. So there'll be painting racks up there. And you'll see there's a beautiful long desk there. That shelf there will be for my skeletons, animal skeletons. And this will be a big sink for messy paintbrushes and the toilet. The whole studio will be heated by that old 18th century stove, and that will be gas. So I'm trying to make this as authentic to the 1800s, and I said the skeleton shelf. Well, you know, Rembrandt had this collection of old, taxidermy, and I have a little bird up there you'll see, and just things that we use in our paintings. I use bones and stuff.